Hello, I'm Dr. Greg Bottaro. I'm the author of The Mindful Catholic, and I wanted to share with you a little bit today about why I wrote the book, what it means for me in my life. I started out discerning religious life. I actually spent 3.5 years as a Franciscan friar. I was with a group called the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal in New York City, and it was founded by a Franciscan priest named Father Benedict Groeschel. Father Benedict Groeschel also happened to be a psychologist, and he did a lot of work with the Archdiocese and helping with some difficulties there, and also bringing psychological expertise into the formation of the young friars. And so Father Benedict is really the person who taught me how to pray. He taught me how to listen to God in the present moment. And obviously I had a flourishing, lively spiritual life. I was discerning religious life, and then I joined religious life. So it's not like prayer was new to me, but I had never really actually learned how to develop interior silence and really listen to the voice of God inside of me. And that's something that Father Benedict taught me how to do. In fact, he helped me discern that I wasn't actually called to religious life in the first place. Even though I had so much joy and exuberance, and it was a beautiful life, and I would recommend other people to give it a try and discern it, I knew that inside of me there were actually much deeper wounds under the threshold of my consciousness that I hadn't yet really come to deal with. And as I was in that space of prayer and in that space of practicing the presence of God and learning how to really discern, I discovered that there were some wounds that I had to actually heal. And it was in that process that God showed up in my life and not only healed those wounds, but also gave me direction and helped me see that he was really calling me to marriage. And so I left the Franciscans before I made final vows, and I went to graduate school. I then got my doctorate in psychology as a clinical psychologist. Now, in my practice, as I was learning and in an internship, as a student resident, I was working with inpatient population at a psychiatric hospital. And we had these groups where we were teaching something called mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. And this is a standardized, researched protocol for helping certain populations of patients with mental health issues. And as I was starting to learn about what mindfulness-based stress reduction was all about in the hospital setting, I was making certain connections to the kinds of things that I had experienced as a friar, learning how to pray with God in the present moment. And I filed those ideas away until I started my practice. And what I realized was that there were a lot of good Catholics who were struggling emotionally and could use some psychological science, but they still wanted to have the trust of a Catholic paradigm. So there's a reason why regular mindfulness is sometimes held with a sense of distrust. And it comes from a fundamentally Buddhist paradigm. Within Buddhism, there is a use of mindfulness as part of the Eightfold Path towards enlightenment. And so there's a good reason why we might want to ask some questions about what is mindfulness first and start to put together a paradigm or a reason for why it might be okay to practice. And what I've done with the Mindful Catholic is actually showed why not only is it okay to practice, it's actually spiritually healthy to practice if it's practiced in a Catholic way. And so, long story short, in a nutshell, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment. It's about how to turn the mind towards the present moment. So right now, if you're listening to this, you are embedded within your environment. You are experiencing a number of different things. You can have lots of other sounds around you. You can have physical sensations coming through your body. You can have other thoughts going through your mind. You might be thinking other thoughts about what I'm saying. Or you might be thinking other thoughts completely unrelated about other things you have to get done in your day, or other conversations you've had with other people, or you might just be wondering what's for lunch. No matter what, though, you have all these different things that are happening, and only one of those things is what's real right now in front of you with your senses of the present moment. And we can be distracted from the present moment, or we can be engaged with the present moment. Where God comes into the picture is that he wants to encounter us in this present moment. And so there is a reason to develop a skill, a cognitive skill, where we learn how to pay attention to the present moment. The actual practice of mindfulness is no different than other techniques to develop your mind and its ability with its different capacities. In other words, you might do memory exercises. You might do abstract reasoning exercises. You might learn how to be more creative and thinking in different ways with story writing or narratives or painting or other things like that. We develop our minds constantly, and we're always looking to make ourselves better through the development of our intellectual capacities. Paying attention is one of those capacities. So the teachings from mindfulness, even though they originated out of a Buddhist worldview system, can actually be incredibly helpful for us to learn how to pay attention to the present moment. If we embed that into a Catholic worldview, we also realize that God is waiting for us in the present moment. So if we work with our psychology, as he created it, by the way, we learn how to become better at paying attention to the present moment, and we find that there he is waiting for us so that we can have deeper communion with him. We can pray better. We can pray more effectively. We can listen to what he's really trying to tell us, and we can discern how to move forward in our life according to his will. If we don't have this Catholic perspective, then mindfulness in itself can still be helpful. It's just learning how to pay attention to the present moment. And it's more helpful than just feeling guilty for not being able to pay attention to your rosary or not being able to pay attention to the Mass. It's not going to ultimately help you change the way that your brain works by just feeling guilty over and over and over again. We actually can learn how to work with the brain and how our minds are created so that we have a better chance of sitting through the rosary and actually meditating on the mysteries, or actually sitting through Mass and really hearing the homily and paying attention to the liturgy. And so we want to work with the mind, work with the way that God created us to help us actually grow closer to him. Another side benefit of working on mindfulness within ourselves, especially in a Catholic context, is that we are learning how to pay more attention to anything in the present moment. Now, when we enter into relationship with other people, and especially with communication, we realize that when we're communicating with somebody, the other person is the thing that's in our present moment. How many conflicts, how much of our disrupted or problematic communication is based on the fact that we're not really actually paying attention to the other person? When we're in the middle of some difficult conversation, you might feel like you are not being paid attention to. Your point is not being understood. Your voice is not being heard. You don't matter. And we can do that to other people as well. Sometimes if somebody's telling us something and in our mind, we're already thinking about whatever we're going to say next. We're not really paying attention to what the other person is saying, how the other person is expressing their feelings or their perspective. Well, at the end of the day, if we learn how to pay attention to the present moment, it's going to help us pay attention to other people in our present moment. This is how we can truly develop deeper communion and really connect with other people and be more present to them. They're going to feel like we're more present with them, and that's going to intensify our intimacy and make our communion more like God.